Good afternoon, welcome. This is a Marion City Council work session for December 3rd, 2019. The first items marked for discussion by the staff are items 2, 3, and 4 on page 4 of the agenda. Prior to that, if there's anything anyone would like to discuss prior to those items, please say so at this time. Otherwise, we'll move on to page 4 with items 2, 3, and 4, and I will turn over the meeting to the Deputy Mayor Pro Tem for these items.
Okay. Does anyone have anything before we get to number 2, which is starred? Alrighty. Mike.
All right, so item number 2, this is accepting the sub-drain package. So this is the drain tile that we put in on the fire station to help drain it before we started the project. So that's all this is accepting the drain tile that was put in for that project. So they were bid separately, hoping that we had good weather so we could get the drain tile in really early and it could start draining the site, so we're not having the issues we're having now. Unfortunately, it took them a while to get in there because it's so wet to even work.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Any questions on 2?
No.
All right, number 3.
So number 3, it was not caught in the plans, but if you stand in the parking lot of what used to be Big Shots and look up, there's a retaining wall that's up on the monitor. If you were using this trail, per building code, you actually can't have more than a 30-inch drop without having a safety rail there. You don't want someone to be using that trail and not realize it, go off the trail and go off that retaining wall and hurt themselves. And so that's actually a building code that wasn't caught during the engineering plans. So this change order is for $8,775 to add a railing to the top of that retaining wall so that someone would hit the railing instead of going over the retaining wall.
Okay.
Does it have a handrail too, or is it just what's
There's
in
not
the
a
ground?
handrail, it's just there for protection.
Gotcha. Any questions on 3? Okay, and then number 4.
And number 4 is the acceptance of Tower Terrace Phase 4. So this is basically from Old Winslow Road to Lennon Lane. And it's obviously been open for a while, but they finally got the punch list items done, so now we're finally accepting the project.
Okay, I think we're good.
Drive it all.
Thanks. Yeah.
And then to page 5, before we get to number 2 under community development, anybody have anything with number 1? Okay, and number 2, Tom.
I don't know if you want to see pictures, but so this is really, you notice there's a number of resolutions. They're all the same, and this is related to Chad Pelley's project out of East of 13. And as you recall, we had created an urban revitalization district to support the local match associated with workforce housing tax credits. And so the area highlighted in red just identifies the area. That's, we created an urban revite district to provide an abatement of taxes over a period of time. So there's 5 individual lots, and they've completed those projects, and these applications would provide for the abatement of taxes consistent with the language in the urban revitalization plan. And it would include, because I don't think it was included in your packet, maybe it was, I don't recall that it was. So it's 80% abatement for 3 years, 70 for 3 years, 60 for 2, and then 50 and 40 for the last 2 years. So that's the abatement schedule provided as a part of the project. And it's similar, well, it's the same as was provided for these units on the east side of Bison Street. And so this would close out the tax abatement for this area.
Meaning
So all of the property within that urban revitalization area, applications have been received.
This is it. Okay. Yep. Thank you. Any questions?
Just go through your definition so everybody's understanding what the urban revitalization project encompasses.
So what the actual buildings are?
Well, what the purpose of it is.
Oh, urban revitalization. It's an abatement program, and to create the district, you create an urban revitalization plan. And in this district, we are creating a plan to support the construction of housing at the workforce housing level. It has income guidelines, and that's the same. And it was supported by the state as far as a tax credit program. So the city has the opportunity. We could have done it as TIF, which is a lot more work to come back and provide for the local match to those applications. By abatement, they get the same benefit. There's just not nearly as much work on our behalf. Attorneys, the finance department doesn't have to cut checks back. They really like it this way. So you'll see when we talk about housing, we like to use urban revitalization. It's just easier to do.
Okay.
So.
And did that program close or expire or something? I had a vague memory that this was the last one of these we were doing, or maybe it was just for that area.
Yeah, so the state has discontinued that tax credit program, I'm fairly certain of. So they kind of changed it up. We were doing senior housing, and then there was workforce housing, and so we kind of work with whatever the state's doing, and we can write those parameters in the urban revitalization districts as we move forward. So
Thank you. Okay, is it back to you, Mr. Mayor? Okay, relinquish the meeting back to the mayor.
Okay, on to the regular agenda items. Under Parks, we have one item that's starred. Mr. Carolyn?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm going to have Seth present on this today. Basically, as I stated in my council memo, that the recreation software package was an item that was budgeted in the FY19 budget. We postponed that purchase while staff did the due diligence with the IT department to make sure that New World or Tyler did not have a product that was suitable for us to use. After almost a year of that vetting process, we came to the conclusion that they did not. So then we proceeded to start the process of looking for a rec software package that we could use. So I'll turn it over to Seth, let him walk through what we're proposing to the City Council for approval.
Good evening. So as Mike said, this has been a process over the last couple of years. So we started off, we issued out a RFP for, we issued out an RFP August 2nd and received 7 proposals September 6th. From those 7 proposals, we narrowed it down to 3 proposals for a demo. And the committee that we selected, or had selected, including city staff, parks, and city staff, we had an overall consensual agreement with Rec Desk. As far as our current functionality with our current software, it's pretty limited with online registrations, and it's not very user-friendly. With the new software that we're proposing here today, it has many features that would actually help our department and the city as far as efficiency with the services that we provide. The first, obviously, is program registration, in person and online, with it being user-friendly. Program and league management. This includes roster building, team building, schedules being created and also issued out, email and text alerts, and also being able to issue out liability forms online. There's also facility rentals and pavilion reservations, which we currently do all in-house, be able to provide that online to customers to be able to use. There's also features of a master calendar, so anything we implement from leagues, practices, rentals, reservations, events, all that can be all in one space to be used. There's also a membership management tool to be able to purchase memberships from daily admissions, memberships, single pool passes, and be able to keep track of admissions on a daily tracking. There's also point-of-sale options. A big one for us, and this would have been huge to have this time of year, is the reporting feature. So instead of having staff spend hours compiling all the information and different resources, we're able to do it within minutes for the different programs, facility reservations, and compile it all together instantly. Also, it's mobile and email responsive, so if we have something going on at Butterfield for a rec supervisor going to check the field and they need to cancel it, they can do it right on their phone and send a text alert immediately rather than having to go all the way back to the office to email out individually or find the rosters and text everyone. So this saves a lot of time, efficiency for employees, not just on these matters for reservations and time spent, but also in times putting together the report and be able to spend more time on other matters within the parks and recreation field. It's ease of use. Customers will be able to get onto the website. I put on the next slide kind of a diagram. It's able to integrate well within our city of Marion. This is kind of their demo page that they put up on the left-hand side, and we can have it's integrated within kind of the city's design. But as you can see, there's big buttons to show the programs, memberships, facilities. So it's really functional, easy for people not to get lost and find where they want to go. And then the reporting side, we'll be able to get instantly reports from program registrations, facility rentals, pool emissions, and get hard numbers on where we're at, and even kind of break it down to even, between family, single memberships, and have a cost breakdown for those two. And then it just helps us be more efficient on how we manage those programs and leagues, be able to provide a better customer service to the people using our services. And then I also put on kind of the staff view. It's a little hard to see, but it has kind of a overall breakdown, kind of some initial reporting features on first, but we'll be able to manage everything we do on the recreation services side of it. The other benefits to the software, it's completely web-based, unlimited users, so we can utilize as many people throughout the city can log on to this and utilize it. And as long as there's Wi-Fi, it can be utilized anywhere. And it's also PCI compliant too for the payments. And so the contract that we have for this, it was Park Board recommended for approval, and it's set for a 3-year agreement for the contract. So, any questions?
Yes.
I have a couple. So will this be on our website? Is that how
So
residents will access it?
Yeah, so the plan is to have this on the website, and so and that was a huge part of making sure that it was integrated well within, because we don't want people to feel like when they go into here that they left the website, and so all the design features will be in there. But yeah, it would be integrated within our website, within our Parks and Recreation page, or however we want to utilize that or get to this module. So
That's great. I love that it's not another thing for people to log into.
yeah.
Secondly, when we were talking about partnering with the YMCA on a lot of our programming, will they also be using
So
this?
this was a huge part of why we were looking at this. The YMCA, they currently have a contract with I can't think of the name of the vendor is going blank, but the whole National Wise use a specific software vendor. But with this, what we were thinking of having a kiosk or kind of a satellite on site. But again, with having unlimited users, we could also have front desk staff there too. Just log on to maybe a Y account, so they can register people too on site. So we haven't logistically worked those details out, but we have ideas and plans to be able to integrate this with current Y programs.
Okay. And then the third was Did you say that this will offer users an app on their phone so they can get messages if a field is shut down because of
Yeah, so there,
conditions or something?
so one of the features that we asked from the vendors is for email and text alerts. So there is a way to be able to receive email and text alerts, and all that would be within when they sign up for programs. We can also do it for shelter reservations and stuff of that nature, where they can just sign up and give us permission to be able to have them in for those
Send
text
them a
alerts.
notice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
She covered my questions.
Other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Could you just talk through is there an annual fee associated with it, or is it a one-time fee? How does that work?
So there's a annual fee of $7,900. The original was $8,300, and we negotiated down to $7,900 because one of the features that we wanted was a auto draft. So we're able to build teams in this website, through the software. But one of the things that they weren't able to do quite yet is do an auto draft. So having a full list of names and just randomly selecting them on teams. And so we asked them to lower the price until they come up with that feature. And so we have $7,900 for the annual price, and then a one-time fee would be $1,200 to integrate within our financial system. So for the first year, I believe it comes out to $9,100.
And there's no user, so many users, and you have to pay an additional fee? Or
No,
anything like that?
the unlimited users, and that's really dictates on revenue. So it's $500,000 in revenues is kind of the bar right now. If once we get up to over $500,000 in revenues, then we step up in that tier.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
All right,
Thank you. Engineering?
So the next item is the TAC request for no parking on Charter Oak. So this is where the individuals came in and gave a presentation to City Council. They got the petition together, and this is now the TAC report from that petition coming back to you. So not only did the petitioners, but also the neighborhood receive notice of this, and were told to come on Thursday if they would like to present.
All right. Thank you.
So the following is approving a purchase agreement for a portion of property related to the Central Corridor project. This is Mrs. Caldemeyer's property located at 2442 Fifth Avenue. You can see the area that we're purchasing highlighted in red. If you continue west, drawing a line, this is the Barron property. And so we've recently acquired this. We've already closed on that piece. And then this is the Lacey property. You continue the line, and there's the piece that we'd be buying the back side of the Lacey piece, and we go to condemnation on that tomorrow. So if all goes accordingly, we'll have this complete leg built around the Belf condemnation as well. We'll have the complete leg approved and moving forward. We still have to take ownership, have closings, remove any facilities on those sites, but we're moving closer. After tomorrow, we really only have one more property to enter into a purchase agreement for, to be able to start the last phase of the construction in the spring. So we will have ongoing expenditures. We will continue to work with Universal Field Services as you see the payments come through, and they'll be doing a lot of the relocation, reestablishment associated with the other facilities that have relocation and reestablishment requirements. So if there's a house or home or a business, this piece is raw ground. So once we close, we'll have ownership and we'll be able to move forward. So if you recall previous conversations, Ms. Caldemeyer, we approached some time ago with a proposal to acquire the property. Once she was served with condemnation papers, she reached out to the city attorney and sat down and chose to move forward with the purchase agreement. So Mr. Lacey did not choose to do that, so tomorrow we have condemnation. Any questions on that?
Go ahead.
Just to confirm, so Caldemeyer is the property the farthest to the east that we needed, is that correct?
That is correct, yep.
Yay.
Yep. I do apologize in the staff report. I did not fill out the budget information, but this is a part of the one of the CIP projects that we had about $1.5 million associated with the acquisition of property, and I believe we're under budget at this point on that line item. So there'll be additional dollars come out of that related to relocation and reestablishment. So.
Okay. Other questions?
The last couple items under the community development are related to approval of acquisition plats associated with the 7th and 7th roundabout. We're just doing a little cleanup in this area. If you look at the GIS mapping, you'll see there's parcel lines that cut through the right-of-way, and like in this vicinity here, these are actual parcels that we've acquired, and then when we acquired them, we didn't cut out the piece that would become right-of-way, and then the remaining piece would become its own parcel. So this just goes through and cleans that up from a mapping perspective. It also provides the opportunity in the event that somebody wants to buy these back, so they're not retaining this. We have an easy transfer. It's just parcel A, plat of survey, whatever, that gets created. But what we're doing is we're taking the acquisition. We're just acquiring the right-of-way part of that, so there'll still be another piece of that ground. They're kind of strange pieces if you look at them. So, for instance, we're just basically acquiring this. We own Lot 8. We're just taking that and putting it into right-of-way. This is on the northeast side of 7th and 7th, so where the bank is. You can see this will be all dedicated as right-of-way. And this is the south side where Giugiano sits here. So this is the curvature. So this is actually street right now, but we're actually including that into the right-of-way. A lot of it's cleanup for mapping as well as in the future if there's a necessity to transfer some of that, it just makes it a little bit easier. Any questions on those?
Tom, did we, pardon me, make a trade with Chuck Kent for a piece of up there?
Yep, we did. It's not. We have an agreement with him on a transfer.
We have an agreement. We haven't done it. Is that
correct? So on this, what we're doing is we've created an acquisition plat to take the right of way from that piece, and then we'll come back and we'll divide Lot 8 in half with a plat of survey. So there'll be a lot, or parcel A, parcel B, and then we'll transfer him that other parcel.
okay?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have is I hear from the country kitchen fellow that there's 3 corners that gets grass cut, and his is not one of them.
Oh.
He doesn't get his grass cut in that 4th corner, and he's wondering why, if the city is spending time and money cutting the other 3 corners, why?
Yeah.
And I noticed that's not one of them we own, and is that why? I mean...
Yeah, we own the other 3 corners.
He owns that piece of land he's talking about.
Yeah, just like
okay.
as an owner, you're responsible. Yeah.
I just didn't know what to tell him.
Yep. No,
I wanted a free pancake, so.
Got more than $4.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Library?
All right. Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. I had provided some supplemental information to the City Council about the impacts that the potential debt issuance related to the library could have on the city going forward, and tried to make sure that there was some clarity surrounding some issues with the way that the information was presented in July and how it was being presented now, related to a difference between what was perceived as the library ask versus what it takes to, we're anticipating that it takes to actually do the project. And so there were a couple of things that I wanted to just offer that clarification on. One is that when you looked at the funding breakdown that was provided to the City Council back in July, at that time we were actually anticipating that we would need to have some short-term financing in order to be able to capitalize things like the local option sales tax, to capitalize the money that would be received from the fundraising campaign. And since then, we've been able to figure out ways to be able to move the local option sales tax forward. The Friends and Foundation have come to the table and agreed to capitalize the fundraising campaign and provide that. We're looking at finessing the timing for the sale of the existing site to be able to bring all those dollars to the project in cash rather than having to finance those. The one piece that we were not able to do that with was the chunk that was anticipated to be funded using tax increment financing. So that does still show out there as debt. That's the difference between the $6 million and $7 million. When I presented to the council at the last meeting, I was showing the all-in debt and wasn't distinguishing between what was going to be used to repay that debt. But the library's ask and the gap that was unfunded that would need to go against the property tax levy directly is and still remains at that $6 million. So I just wanted to be very clear about that piece for the council. We have had a chance to go back through and do some financial projections based on what it would look like for the debt service levy over the next several years. And just looking at where we are now, the current fiscal year, we're at $2.15. We would anticipate next year we would go to $2.19, $2.21 the year after that, and then we would peak in FY23 at about $2.25. Now, of course, we have made some assumptions about what's going to happen with the city's property tax growth over that period of time, but I will say that we have a little bit of flexibility in being able to moderate that levy. For example, part of what's impacting that is that when we issued the debt for the YMCA, we have local option sales tax that still goes to the YMCA, and so that is being applied to repay the debt that was taken on to pay for that. Well, if we don't hit what we're projecting for our property tax valuation to go up, say at 7%, say we end up at 6.2, we can use a little more local option sales tax in that first year to still hit this target for the impact that it has on the debt service levy. And then the next year, if we're a little stronger than the 3.5% that we're projecting, we still have some flexibility and some room to adjust. I will also say that, the way that we've done these is not as sophisticated as what our bonding agent will be able to do. Our bonding agent, if you think of these in terms of bonds, the annual payments are really almost individual loans of their own. So if our bonding agent projects forward and says, you know what, in FY25, the city is going to go from $2.22 down to $2.04, she may choose to do a smaller note in the first year and a larger one the next year and keep that debt service levy the same. And you can do that with her modeling software. It's just very, very difficult for us to be able to do that at this level. So there will be an impact because obviously, what we had provided with the council was what the total debt for the library would run, which would be around 21 cents. So if we didn't do the library, presumably this number could be lower, or there's that opportunity cost that the city council could elect to fill that gap with other projects. I can tell you that I did look back over the history of the debt service levy, and looking back to 96, 97, which would be about the time that the city completed the last library expansion, and shortly after we finished the second fire station, the city's debt service levy was $2.30, and then rose to $2.44, then went to $2.35, and then went down to $2.11. So much like we're contemplating now, there is that period of about 3 years after you do a large debt issuance. That was the last time we did a couple of them that were stacked in sequence, much as we're contemplating now, where you did see that little bit of a hump that showed up in the debt service levy. The very last time it happened to us was after we built the police station, and with that one, the city's debt service levy peaked in 2012, 2013 at $2.51. I'll also say, though, that compared to the projections of the time, we thought it was going to go to 278. So that's where Marion's growth has typically helped over time for us to be able to blunt the impacts of that. Essentially what it means is that, the debt service levy, we can carry more debt, we have more dollars because the city's valuation is growing and we're simply a larger community. So while it is always something for the city to be concerned about, when I look at those numbers and look at how much we're charging per capita or per $100,000 of value, it's absolutely consistent with where we've been going back 30 plus years, that we're not looking at deviating wildly from that. In sheer numbers, as far as total dollars of debt that the city would have, we would peak at about $72 million and then slowly start to move downward from there. When I look at what's in the CIP and look at the out years in the CIP, I don't see a lot of large building projects still sitting out there once we get past this. The next likely one after this would be a fourth fire station, and at this point we're anticipating that a fourth fire station is going to be much more along the scale of the existing Station 1, a satellite station, not a headquarters station like we're building with the new facility. The new headquarters station has the training room and everything to accommodate the staff when we're fully out to a series of 4. So I don't see another giant project for buildings that's going to drive us to take on additional debt. You do have the Tower Terrace Road Bridge. We do have the Albernet Road extension out there as still significant projects in the CIP, but as the council knows, we've been working on a funding strategy for Tower Terrace Road, and that's not an imminent project for us. That is scheduled over the next couple of years that would continue to drive that number upward. So when we project it out, we look at the debt service levy and we see that we would peak at around that 225 level and then slowly start to move downward from there over the next 15 to 20 years.
Over 15 to 20 years?
Hang on. The big opportunity where it really starts to move downward is when the police station comes fully off of the books, which is around 2030. We'd peak in FY23 at $2.25, again, depending on continued growth in the community, averaging around 3 to 3.5%. Then in FY27, it would hit $2.28, and then by FY32, it would be down to $1.91. But as with anything else, we're making assumptions about future debt issuances that the council will have to make decisions on as well. When we get into some of those other projects, those larger projects, the council has to take action for us to issue debt on those. If you choose not to, or you choose to scale back the CIP, then obviously these numbers come backwards.
Right. That's a big assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Progressing a long time.
Go ahead.
20 years is a long time. I see things like swimming pools that cost, I see things that we're going to want to do during that period.
Renee?
I just had a request for Thursday. Can you have some of the graphs that you're referencing so we could see them, just the trends and stuff? It's just easier, at least for me to follow where we've been and where we might be headed based on.
Yeah, some of it's in tables, so it's not graphed, but this is the one that we put together for what the debt service levy looks like. Sorry, it's in a web page, so I can't easily.
And if we choose to, unrelated to the library, based on CIP and things at our upcoming budget meetings, if we choose to, I know we had a hard time, but we maintained the current tax levy. If we choose to raise that, that will also impact these numbers, or no?
Correct.
Yes, it will. Right.
There's a couple of pieces in there that, for the overall city property tax levy, that are kind of wild cards when it comes to pieces like this. And that's why I often don't really like to get into projecting a lot of these in isolation, but prefer to see how they fit the piece of the overall puzzle. For example, if the city council were to choose to do a massive expansion of transit options in the city, that has a dedicated levy. We'd have to evaluate what the impact would be and how that fits in with the overall levy. If we have years, which we have had in recent years, where the city's cost of benefits have not risen as fast as the overall property tax valuation of the community, we have the opportunity to move some of those other levies downward. And so when we piece the budget together during the course of the year, we try to make sure we're keeping that overall levy fairly consistent. Rollback has a significant impact on it, as the council knows. A couple of percentage swings on rollback can make the levy number change quite a bit, but how much an individual pays out of their pocket may hardly change at all. And depending on how the levies swing, sometimes commercial picks up a little bit more that year, residential picks up a little bit less, and if the rollbacks go the other direction the next year, residential picks up a little bit more and commercial picks up a little bit less.
Thank you.
I think I'll piggyback on Renee's request. I think to go back and look at the history of our debt service levy as well as our debt percentage. I mean, going clear back to these years you're talking about into the 90s, because if we look back and we're able to, and people are asking us questions about either one of those, we're able to go back and say, hey, here's a period. We're in a period of time right now in our city where we are clearly in a growth mode. I mean, that's exactly why all of us are sitting up here, because we think it's a very critical part of this city's future. And so there's some very important decisions to make. So we talk about the major projects going on all at the same time of the library, a fire station, the YMCA, public services. And I'm not sure there's been a time in our history where that many major city projects or important projects for this city are all going on at the same time. So I think having some of this reflection looking backwards, especially for those of us who have lived here for a long time, and look back at some of these peaks and then say, all right, this was the period of time where we added the library, the police station, and some of these things. And all of these situations do reflect or usually result in a little bit of a spike in the debt service levy. So I think having some of that, you know, Paul's great on history, but I think from the standpoint of us being able to go back and say, yeah, this is pretty typical, this is pretty common for a period of time, and then if it includes some, you know, some amount of your projections like you have on here, reflect that going forward as far as you're comfortable. But I think having that history, I mean, I'm certainly, I think the information you provided us, Lon, makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, especially on our debt percentage being, and with the growth, continued growth the city's going to have. I was expecting a higher number than the 44%. So when I start looking at that number, I go, yeah, I'm expecting the 42, the 41, 42 to bump up some. And with our continued growth that we're forecasting or anticipating, with all of these projects going on at the same time and capping at about 44, I certainly felt more comfortable with that. So I think the information you gave us was certainly valuable and very important.
Yeah, and this chart actually was one I did several years ago for some public presentations that we were doing that kind of graphs out the history of the debt service levy over time. And you can see this one only goes back to 95, 96, but you can kind of see that's where that spike hit from the construction of the fire station and the library happening in very close proximity to each other. If you go back a little bit before that, you had the police station and the former public service services facility that were also built fairly close to each other in the mid-1980s. Marion, as a growing community, just seems to be on a 30-year cycle. City Hall, this one was built in 2005. We moved in 2006. The prior City Hall, the city had acquired in 1977, so there's about 30 years in between. That seems to be kind of the cycle we're on. Now, we'll dig up some data to go back a little bit further on this so that you can kind of see that, but this one does kind of illustrate that spike in the mid-90s that I was talking about. You can kind of see one of the things that I know that I personally get pillarized about a lot is what Marion's debt was when I came here, and that was reflected in that 07, 08 years. But I find it interesting, that's the low water mark in Marion's 30-year history. That was the lowest period of debt that we had as a community. And we'll provide that context for what the percentage looked like overall, because I know 95, 96, the debt service levy was higher. We also had a much lower bonding capacity at the time, so the overall percentage, I believe, was in that 40% range as well. But we'll verify that and see. We can take a targeted look, especially at that 82 to 85 period when the fire station and public services facility were built, or excuse me, police station and public services facility were built.
Ready? Okay. Any further discussion on this? This is the time to ask your questions.
I would also note that Councilwoman Gadela had reached out about wanting some information for what was presented to the public, particularly for the local option sales tax vote and the Imagine8 process, as far as public input and how that came together. I believe Amber has already sent out the informational materials that were used for the local option sales tax election, so you can see how the library featured in that as a key piece of the single largest project that we were proposing. The Imagine8 process wasn't done through the city. That was done through the Chamber of Commerce, so I'll reach out to them to have them provide that information and background.
Thank you. I do have a question, not about the library.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I see we're having the discussion about the ethics policy Thursday, but there wasn't anything in the packet. Will we be getting information to consider before the discussion, or is it just going to be like unpaused from a couple months ago when we brought it up? I thought legal maybe was looking into something. I just wondered if we had any data to consider.
Kira's the one that's going to be here on Thursday, so I don't know exactly what materials, if any, she'll be presenting, or if it'll just be an oral presentation.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Anything else? Thank you for joining us. Meeting is adjourned.